If you could pick any two fighters in a fantasy matchup, who would you pick? Maybe more importantly, how would you pick? What would be your criteria? Would you pick hard hitters, fast movers, trash talkers, or the quiet enigmas? Who would be your ideal match? Gennady "Triple G" Golovkin is one of boxing's favorite sons, a two-time middleweight world champion who frequently appears at the top of pound-for-pound lists across the boxing community. Golovkin holds a controversial, nearly undefeated record at 40-1 with one draw. Infamous for the power behind his punches, especially for a middleweight, and his indestructible chin, Golovkin is truly a living legend of the sport, though there are some who wonder whether he's ever faced his true match and proven it.
This is now the fourth fight in a row against a top middleweight in which Triple G has gone the distance. Before he faced Daniel Jacobs, the best middleweight he'd been in with to that point, Golovkin had stopped 23 consecutive opponents. Many were world class, none were elite middleweights. Soon as he started facing the best in the division, the very best, the knockouts stopped. Even the winning has slowed down.
Nate Diaz is a mixed martial artist, boxer, and former welterweight champion in Strikeforce, WEC, and IFC, with a diverse career, a checkered reputation, and an undeniable talent. Boasting a record of 26-9, Diaz is a favorite in the cage, but due to his unpredictable personality, high level of anxiety in public, and the long breaks he takes between matches, he remains an enigma to both fans and pundits.
And I said, that's it, man, this is it. This kid's not going to show up in Vegas, didn't show up in Toronto. What else isn't he going to show up for? Is he not going to show up for the fight? I'm not going to risk that.
What would happen if these two unique talents faced off against each other in the ring? What kind of fight would their styles make? And who would be most likely to win? Like, share, and subscribe to Ultimate Fighting Network as we find out who'd win a boxing match, Gennady "Triple G" Golovkin or Nick "Diablo" Diaz. Gennady Golovkin was born in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, and never knew anything but fighting. His older brothers would pit him in street fights against adult men when Golovkin was still a small child. At age 10, he joined a local boxing gym, and by 11, he was boxing competitively. Golovkin entered his professional career in 2006 with an outstanding amateur record of 345-5, and all the wealth of experience that came with such a vast number of matches. He quickly made a name for himself in Europe and then in the USA beginning in 2012, and by 2015 was the unified middleweight champion upon defeating David Lemieux. As a top-rated pound-for-pound fighter, Golovkin appeared unbeatable until he faced Canelo Alvarez in 2017. The fight ended in a hotly debated split decision, the first draw of Golovkin's professional career. 1 year later, in the highly anticipated rematch against Alvarez, Golovkin was defeated and his impeccable record was forever marred. Alvarez remains the only fighter who has ever beaten Gennady Golovkin. Golovkin's incredibly successful fighting style begins with his unique training. He famously spars with a variety of fighters in his training camp, including partners in various weight classes. Golovkin doesn't use any assistants, conditioning coaches, or nutritionists, preferring instead to maintain a more traditional, humble approach to diet and training. He also avoids fame outside of boxing, rejecting offers to be in ads and movies. An athlete through and through. The foundation of Golovkin's success is his power. He is an incredibly hard hitter and deadly accurate with his punches.
Does it hurt as hard as it seems?
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts. Every punch he throws is a hard shot, even the jab. He's a great fighter, and I think he's going to be the top middleweight in the world.
He's also mastered an unusual marriage of styles, the Eastern European boxing style of his upbringing with what is known as Mexican style, an aggressive, close-up method of putting pressure on one's opponents. With his left jab, unusually powerful, Golovkin drives his opponents into the ropes, leaving them no escape. This also gives him an opportunity to throw incredibly destructive body shots at close quarters, as well as overhand strikes. As his record attests, this combination of techniques has served him incredibly well. Nick Diaz was born in Stockton, California, and also began his fight training young, along with his younger brother, fellow MMA fighter Nate Diaz. He trained in karate and aikido as a child and wrestled as a teen. He was an athletic youth, swimming on the swim team as a freshman in high school and training in sambo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and mixed martial arts early on. Diaz was 18 when he made his professional MMA debut and became a champion after only 2 professional fights when he defeated Chris Little for the IFC Welterweight Championship in 2002. Diaz would go on to fight in the UFC, Pride FC, Elite XC, strike force, and dream, all the while making a name for himself, both as a powerful fighter, but also as a controversial one. Diaz was a trash talker, engaging in weigh-in fights, in-cage talk, and aggression at press conferences. He's also been suspended and tested positive multiple times for marijuana use. Behind the scenes, Diaz has built an enigmatic reputation. He avoids the limelight for long stretches at a time. He sometimes appears quiet and muddled in interviews. He's admitted to powerful anxiety, so much so that he experiences extreme stress in intense situations. This feels like a far cry from the aggressive persona he shows in the cage.
Gives me a little anxiety, you know what I mean, extra, especially when I feel like, you know, if this type of a show that I run, I'm like, I don't have to deal with, especially at this point in time in my life, I don't have to deal with nobody. But, you know what I mean, like, you know, my level of respect towards what was really going on there was like, you know, so it just makes me nervous because like my normal mentality, you know, I had to like take it back a notch, but I really had to be a part of what was going on too. So that was a stressful day. And
like Golovkin, Diaz's training has everything to do with his style. He trains in triathlons for fun, building his endurance as a result. He's obsessive about what he puts in his body, having been vegan for many years.
I know he lives a very clean lifestyle in terms of his diet. Jake Shields and some guys have told me if you ever have a pop and Nate Diaz walks in the room, he won't even say anything to you. Just pick your pop up and walk over and dump it out and come back, then sit down and start talking to you. Or he'll take your pop and he'll go dump it out and then he'll fill your cup up with water and just sit it. It won't even say anything, but there's certain things that he just will not put in his body. And he doesn't like it if you put in yours. But it does speak to a little bit of this clean lifestyle.
Despite the long spans between fights, Diaz never seems to let himself go. Fellow fighters and pundits report that when they see Diaz, he always looks as close to fighting weight as ever, even when he has no fights scheduled. Unlike many MMA fighters, Diaz's boxing style relies on volume rather than power. He wears down his opponents with hundreds of strikes, throwing in hard punches only occasionally. He's an endurance fighter, keeping the pace of the fight as constant as possible, applying pressure consistently, knowing that he's far less likely to tire than his opponent. Even his in-cage trash talking is part of this strategy, as the constant aggression takes a mental toll on whoever he's facing. If Golovkin and Diaz were to step into the boxing ring together, who would win? It's a common understanding that boxers win boxing matches and MMA fighters win MMA matches, and that's usually held true throughout the history of modern combat sports. Diaz has been trained in boxing and competed once, winning the fight by unanimous decision after 4 rounds. Golovkin has boxed since he was a child and holds a nearly undefeated record, so the cards are stacked against Diaz from the get-go. From the ground up, both fighters have some key similarities. They both take their training very seriously and never seem to slip on the mental side of the sport, and they're both renowned for their endurance and durability. Golovkin's iron chin is legendary, and he would not be easily worn down by Diaz, though Diaz's verbal aggression would probably be unprecedented among the opponents Golovkin has faced in the past. It's unlikely that Diaz has ever faced an opponent who hits quite as hard as Golovkin, especially in the middleweight division. He'd have to put much of his effort into defense, avoiding Golovkin's missile hands and keeping out of Golovkin's traps, and less into his typical mode of volume punching. It would be, by all accounts, a vicious fight. Neither fighter would likely fight at distance. Both rely on pressure, and it would be fascinating to see who would break first. With a reach advantage of 6 inches, Diaz could possibly keep Golovkin at length for a while, but is that where his comfort level lies? And how long could he keep Triple G at bay? In the end, as expected, it could all hinge on level of experience. Diaz has a winning boxing record, but has only fought 1 match. Golovkin has been nearly undefeated for his entire career. But what a fight that would be. Do you agree? Who do you think would win, Golovkin or Diaz? How do you think that fight would go? Comment down below, and thanks for watching.